Bram Stoker's Dracula has been a classic piece of Gothic literature. It led people to imagine the horrors and wonders of a supernatural being who can't eat, can't sleep, and is always thirsty for human blood. So of course, the Marvel Universe had to have its iteration of that character. In this video, we will look into the family tree of Dracula of Marvel and see if his life and his family ties were better than any other Dracula adaptations present on air. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin.
Good evening, Avengers. I see you received my invitation.
Dracula. In the Marvel Universe of Earth 616, Dracula is not just a vampire. He is a vampire, sorcerer, and Transylvanian nobleman. He has a fortress from where he rules over his kingdom. That fortress is known as the Castle Dracula. He was not born a vampire though. He was initially a Wallachian ruler, popularly known as Vlad the Impaler. However, when his mighty kingdom faced the threat of the Ottoman Empire invading their land, Vlad decided that sacrificing his humanity and becoming a vampire would be the only way that he would be able to protect his family and kingdom. This is how he ended up becoming a vampire. Over the years, Dracula often finds himself in conflict with other immortals of vampire hunters. This was because the lust for power and blood drove Dracula. He is the supreme ruler and the most ruthless of all the vampires to ever exist. But Dracula is definitely not alone in this quest for glory for the vampire kind. Over the years, his extended family, his loyal servants, his minions, and his wives have all played critical roles in making Dracula the power-hungry beast that he is. In the most recent development that we have seen of him, Dracula has decided to take up Chernobyl as his safe haven along with the rest of his kind. He has been working on developing a new vampire nation, which, as a lot of us have guessed already, will end up becoming an issue for the Avengers soon enough. Vlad Dracula, Vlad the Elder, or Father. Dracula may be a vampire king, but he did have a family once, a loving one at that. One of the biggest influences in his life is his father. His father, better known as Vlad Dracula, or Vlad the Elder, was born in Transylvania, specifically in the kingdom of Wallachia. He fathered two sons, Vlad and Radu. Vlad the Elder was not a bad man. He was quite responsible. This is one of the biggest reasons why he was made the king of Wallachia, courtesy of Sigismund II, the Holy Roman Emperor, back in 1431. This was definitely a piece of good news at first, but when you are the king of a small kingdom, it has its own cons. One of the biggest cons of being the ruler of a smaller kingdom is that chances are there are other kingdoms who definitely want to be the one in control of you, and that is exactly what happened. The Ottoman Empire was showing a keen interest in the Wallachian Empire, and Vlad was not okay with that. He thought that perhaps if he spoke to the representatives of the Ottoman Empire and struck a negotiation, he and his kingdom would be safe. He decided to take his sons with him to this meeting. However, en route, they were ambushed. As his sons were in grave danger, in order to save them and himself, Vlad was forced to support Turkey. But this was something that he did because his hands were pretty much forced. Now, this is something that his advisors refused to understand. In their eyes, Vlad the Elder had betrayed them and the kingdom by supporting Turkey. So John Hunyadi and his other advisors brutally murdered him and his sons in the revolts. Radu the Handsome, brother. Radu Dracula, who was directly inspired by the real-life Radu III, was Dracula's older brother. He was the one who had gone with Vlad the Elder for the negotiation with regard to the Ottoman Empire's interest in the Wallachian kingdom. They simply wanted to negotiate peace. However, as we have mentioned before, they were ambushed on their way by people under Sultan Murad II. The people took the sons hostage and forced Vlad the Elder to show support for Turkey. This led to a revolt amongst his advisors, and eventually, Vlad the Elder and his son Mircea were killed in this event. Radu did not die here, but the fate he went through was worse. He was taken captive, and he stayed that way for 5 years. Throughout these 5 years, he went through torture, and eventually, he succumbed to his injuries and passed away. However, when it comes to Radu III, the historical character, the story went a little differently. He was actually a competition for Dracula, that is, Vlad Tepes, as both of them were legitimate heirs to the throne. He was called Radu the Handsome because of his irresistible beauty in his teenage years. But in the Marvel Universe, this is not the only brother that Dracula has. Turns out, when he was 7, he decided to oust his half-brother Alexandru Aldea from the throne of Wallachia because he did not want to share it with him. The passing of Radu did play a huge role in Dracula's need for vengeance because he was forced to run away, leaving his brother in that position in order to save himself when he was just 18. Zophia, first wife. Zophia was the first wife of Count Dracula. This marriage was set by Vlad the Elder. He wanted to see his son happy, and for that, he arranged a marriage for him with a Hungarian noblewoman. However, as this was an arranged marriage, Dracula did not have any sense of loyalty towards Zophia. In fact, every step of the way, he made it very clear that he did not like her. This became even more obvious when Zophia gave birth to their daughter Lilith. Dracula was not very happy with the female heir, and that made his behavior towards Zophia worse over the years. He tortured her mentally and physically, and as if that was not enough, he cheated on her several times without even trying to hide it. This pain was unbearable for Zophia, but she wanted to power through it for the sake of her daughter Lilith. However, when Vlad the Elder died, Dracula stripped Zophia of her queen title and kicked her out of the castle. With nowhere else to go, Zophia was distraught with the child in her hand, as Dracula kicked Lilith out with her as well. Zophia met a gypsy woman by chance. Her name was Gretchen. Zophia decided that Gretchen would be able to keep Lilith safe, away from her father, so she handed Lilith over to Gretchen. Once Zophia was sure that Lilith would be safe, taken care of, and properly loved, Zophia killed herself because of the brutal treatment that she got at the hands of Count Dracula. Maria, second wife. Now, while Dracula's first marriage was a whirlwind of anger and hatred, his second marriage was more of a tragedy and sadness. Maria and Dracula got married after Zophia had killed herself. Maria and Dracula's marriage was not an arranged one, and it was by choice. Because of this, there was a lot of love in their relationship. They had one son together, Vlad Tulus, and Dracula was not unhappy about it as he had always wanted a male heir. By this time, Dracula had garnered quite a massive amount of hate from the gypsies and was given the monikers the Impaler and the Devil because of how cruel he was towards the people. Despite the brutality he showed as a ruler, that brutality did not enter his marriage because Dracula clearly had a soft spot for Maria. However, tragedy struck this happy couple when Turkey invaded Transylvania. The year was 1459 and Dracula had to defend Transylvania from Turkey. In the battle that followed, he was gravely injured in the hand of Turak, the commanding officer of the Turkish army. Now, Turak was an opportunistic man. He wanted Dracula to be a part of the Turkish army and help the expansion. So he used the fear that Dracula's name brought in the hearts of people and left Dracula in the care of a gypsy woman, hoping she would cure him back to health out of fear. However, what Turak did not know was that the gypsies were not very fond of Dracula. The lady, Leanda, decides to take revenge for all her grief that Dracula has caused her people by turning him into a vampire. Turak did not know about this, so he took Dracula back to his own castle and locked him in the dungeon. While all of this was happening, Maria and Vlad Tulus were taken hostage by Turak and his people. Maria did not escape the terrible and cruel fate of a female prisoner of war, and she was assaulted by Turak and his men several times right in front of the unconscious Dracula. When Dracula wakes up, Turak threatens the safety of Maria and Vlad and forces Dracula to join the Turkish Empire. At first, Dracula did not want to do it, but when he realized that this would protect his wife and son, he conceded. When he was alone with his wife, Maria told Dracula about the horrors that she had gone through. Dracula was understandably furious. Right then, Turak showed up, shamelessly asking Maria to go wait for him in the bedchambers. Not wanting to go through that again, Maria refused and a scuffle followed. In this, Maria ended up slamming her head against a stone column of the dungeon fatally. This pushed Dracula off the edge, and in his vampiric rage, he broke out of his chains and fed on a human for the first time, Turak. Maria's untimely death took a huge toll on Dracula, and he left Vlad Tulus to be brought up by the gypsies. Over the years, while Dracula has married several other women, deep down he has always mourned his lost love, Maria. Domini, third wife. Dracula's marriage with Domini had its own unexpected twists and turns. Domini grew up in a convent, and she eventually ran away from the convent. She joined the Church of the Damned, a cult that Anton Lupescu led. Now, Domini, being the young woman in a cult, was chosen to be the sacrifice. Dracula showed up at the same place at the same time this ritual was happening under the guise of the demon they were worshipping because he wanted to garner more human followers. He asked Domini to be spared, and when Lupescu offered her hand in marriage, Dracula accepted. They got married. Now, once married, they had a baby called Janice. They had this baby by using a spell to impregnate Domini, so Janice was no ordinary boy. Now, as Dracula, who showed up as the demon the Church of the Damned was worshipping, and Domini gave birth to the child of that demon, it is only natural that Janice will biome the lead of the church. But Anton did not want that to happen. Anton showed up at the ceremony where the baby was being named the leader of the church and shot Dracula. Dracula turned himself into mist, but the bullet hit Janice and Janice died. So Dracula killed Lupesky. Later, Domini went to Janice's grave and magically resurrected him. His spirit was bound to the spirit called Golden Angel. This led to Janice showing up as an adult. However, soon after this happened, adult Janice and Dracula were called by the demon who introduced himself as Satan. The meeting with the demon resulted in Janice being turned into a baby and Dracula being turned into a human. Even though Domini told Quincy Harker, the vampire hunter, to let Dracula be, Quincy eventually did kill Dracula. Shikla, fourth wife. However, obviously, Dracula did not stay dead for long. We see him return again in a Deadpool comic series. Here we learn that the monsters and vampires have been at war for a really long time, even before man came to be as we know it. The royal family of the monsters suffered a lot because of this feud. It was assumed that 2 royal princes had died, and in order to save the princess from that fate, the king locked her away into a sarcophagus to wait out the feud, or until she was ready to be married. This princess is Shikla. She is a succubus sorceress. For Dracula, she was going to be a piece for him to use to get the whole monster realm and vampires to get together so that he could rule over them both. He called upon Deadpool to find Shikla and bring her to him because he was someone who could not be mind controlled. However, turns out that her brothers, Amjad and Bakweer, were actually not dead, which made Dracula marrying Shikla pointless as she would not be the monarch if her brothers were alive. However, Dracula got annoyed with her brothers and decapitated them, which Shikla learned from her pet dragon Bug who was traveling through mirrors. This led to her turning to Deadpool and giving in to all the urges that she had been suppressing for him the entire time they had been together. Dracula tried to pull them apart, but eventually decided to let them be, and they married in New York City. However, their marriage did not last long because Wade started becoming negligent, which affected Shikla a lot. When the bystanders killed her oldest and most loyal subject for wandering out of Monster Metropolis, her disdain towards Wade multiplied tenfold and ended up becoming disdain towards humanity as a whole. She wanted nothing to do with them and wanted to destroy everyone. She even used a historical artifact known as the Scepter of the Manticore to raise an army that would be loyal to her and be undefeatable. In order to stop her from destroying humanity, Deadpool asks Dracula for help. Dracula agrees to help, and the moment he meets Shikla, he decides to propose to her. They got married, and when Shikla herself decided that she did not like ruling over her subjects, she decided to leave the ruling to the subjects and went to do her own thing with Dracula, was happily enjoying his retirement before he got into this mess. Lilith Drake, daughter of Zophia. Lilith was cast out of the castle Dracula when she was only a year old. There was no hiding how much her father did not like her. Her mother, Zophia, killed herself after handing Lilith over to a Roma woman called Gretchen. As we know, Dracula had never been too kind to Roma people. This led to Lilith's hatred for Dracula growing over the years. Lilith knew how Dracula had treated Zophia, and now she grew up watching how he treated her other family, the Roma people. Things hit the fan when Gretchen's son Arnie was killed by Dracula when he attacked one of the Roma villages. So, as an act of revenge, Lilith was turned into a vampire by Gretchen. The spells used made Lilith immune to pretty much all the weaknesses that vampires have. This led to the lifelong struggle between Lilith and Dracula. Her hatred fueled her to seek out her father, even track him, just to find the best opportunity to kill him. Vlad Tulus, son of Maria, deceased. Turak entered into the life of Maria and Dracula in the year 1459. That was also the year when Vlad Tulus was born. As we know, the infant and his mother were taken hostage by Turak, and a Romani lady called Leanda used a spell to turn Dracula into the vampire that we know him as today. Turak had assaulted Maria several times, and while trying not to be assaulted again by him, Maria ended up hurting herself fatally and passed away. This led to Dracula's vampiric tendencies manifesting, and he fed on Turak. This incident led to Dracula realizing that he was an unfit parent, and he decided to leave Vlad with the Romani people instead. Vlad Tulus grew up with the Romani people, and eventually, one day, he met with his father, but on the opposite side. The father and son clashed against one another, and Dracula killed Vlad Tulus. Janice, son by Domini. Janice Tepesh is the son of Domini and Dracula, who was sired with the help of a spell from Anton Lupensky. When Janice was killed, Domini resurrected him by allowing the spirit of the Golden Angel to possess him. This Golden Angel is the angel from heaven who has thwarted Dracula's plans in the past. However, once it took on the form of Janice Tepesh, things became a bit more obvious. This adult Janice was the biggest opponent of his father Dracula. He fought with Dracula to prevent the victims from turning into vampires. As we know, Quincy Harker, Dracula's biggest foe, had at one point stopped Dracula. The golden angel present in Janice left his body, turning the adult Janice into a 5-year-old Janice who was then kidnapped by another vampire known as Varney. However, he was soon rescued by his brother Zerus. Zerus Son. Zerus is the son of Dracula. We meet him when he makes it very obvious that he believes in vampire supremacy. Zerus was not happy with humans encroaching on the vampire territories, and he was ready to take a stand for it. He was also not very happy with how his father was leading the kingdom. These two factors led to his decision to usurp the throne, but in order to do that, Zerus had to have support. So he got all the different vampire sects, starting from the seers, the seductresses and warriors, etc. Together, he decapitated his father and took his throne. Using the power he held, he saved his brother Janice from Varney. Frank Drake, descendant of Vlad Tulus. Frank Drake was the son of Vlad Tulus, the son of Maria. When his family left Romania, they changed the surname to Drake. When Vlad died, Frank got $1 million in Dracula's castle. While rich, he met Clifton Graves and Jeannie Ovington. While he ended up in a relationship with Jeannie, Frank was not very stable financially, as he ended up squandering the $1 million in 3 years. Eventually, he was left with just the castle, which he knew his father wanted to sell, but never got a buyer from. The trio decided to turn it into a tourist attraction instead. However, the reality was that Graves was going to kill Frank and take the castle for his ex, Jeannie. Now, while checking the castle out, they foolishly took out the stake from Dracula's skeleton, which led to Dracula being resurrected. This led to Dracula and his grandson facing off against each other. While Frank is able to save Jeannie, this victory is temporary because Dracula, in the end, turns Jeannie into a vampire, leading to them fighting again. However, the fight ended with Dracula escaping while Jeannie perished in the sunlight as Frank worked hard to save his friend Graves. Frank spent his entire life fighting with Dracula and his other descendants, eventually ending up in a battle with Varney, the Darkholder's sorceress who turned into a vampire. By the end of the battle, Frank was left as a bare shell of his former self. Marvelous verdict. No matter which adaptation of this classic character you look at, life was never easy for Dracula. While he was powerful and feared, he led a rather sad and lonely life, ending up alone and being forced to either watch his family die or forced to kill them himself. This rage and grief could be one of the reasons why this vampire king is so cold. What do you think? And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.